And welcome to the 8 o'clock buzz. I'm Martin Alvarado, filling in for whoever was filling in. And right now we have Chris Menton, an associate professor at Roger Williams University, who asserts that bike patrols are more effective than car patrols. Welcome to our show, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
So usually we think of bike patrols as maybe where police officers get assigned after they haven't been on the job for too much of a long time, or if they screw up, they go to bike patrols. But what is your take on bike patrols in terms of how they interact with the community?
Well, my take on bike patrols is not all that different from what you just said, is that it's kind of a discounted mode of patrol. Yet I took a look at it because when I teach the courses in policing, the textbooks have very little information about really how effective and how much used bicycles are. So I went out and I looked at 5 different cities, and my take is that if you want to get more work done, you should put the police officer on the bike. Now, let me just clarify that, because I'm not saying, let's mothball all the cars. What I'm saying is that there needs to be a more blended deployment is what I'm looking for and what I recommend.
Okay. And the differences are, what would be one of the differences, say, if there's a police officer in a car going around a neighborhood and there's someone on a bike? I guess one of the things is the car puts a certain physical barrier between the police officer and the rest of the community. And does a bike make it a more immediate way of approaching the people that the police are enforcing the law around?
Yeah, if you've ridden a bike, you know that you're in the thick of it, and you're not insulated by a car, and that's the same thing for a police officer. And for the public to see the police officer in the thick of it, kind of dealing with the same atmospheric conditions, if you will, without the air conditioning on in the car or the heater on, it kind of stimulates, I think, a bond, or at least some sort of a mutual respect that's going on between the police and the members of the community. One of the things that has amazed me so much is when riding with the police on the bicycles, unsolicited, citizens would holler out gratuitous remarks like, "Thank you very much for being here." And I got to tell you, for a police officer, that's not a bad thing to hear.
It's probably very unusual. And
it becomes common on the bicycle.
Yeah. Well, that's good. What are the things as in the carrying out of the duties of police work? How does being on a bike influence, say, being on a car in terms of responding to emergencies or being in communication with the rest of the police force?
Well, I think that with technology, we've shrunk down these BlackBerries so that they can function the same way a computer does in the patrol car. So technologically and communication-wise, I don't think there's any real difference. If you buy the miniaturized equipment, they have miniaturized defibrillators, and there's a number of other things that oftentimes the rationale is you can't use a bike because you got to carry this equipment. The other is you mentioned is getting to calls. Now, I'm not advocating that in a rural county that has miles and miles of roads that police officers should hop on their bikes, but most people live and most police officers operate in densely populated areas, and in those areas, sometimes during particular parts of the day, a bicycle is going to get you to a call faster than a car is.
And, well, in terms of getting to emergencies, in terms of speed, is there also a way where bicycles are more effective at getting places where police cruisers wouldn't be able to?
Well, let me give you an example.
Of their
Certainly
size?
There's places where they can't go into where cars can't go easily into parks and down thin alleys, and a number of other places where if you don't want people to see what you're doing, that might be where you'd go. And that's what police officers on bicycles find. They find that what we call quality of life crimes, public drinking, pot smoking, crack smoking, public urination, those kind of things, or the police officer on the bikes come across those at a far higher frequency and are able to be dealing with this at a far higher frequency than the police officers in the car. But one time down in, as one I'm observing in North Carolina, a police officers were at a large domestic violence call, and the police officers in the car came up to the police officer on the bike and says, you know, there's an apartment complex that I know there's something going on, but as you get into the apartment complex, the apartment 3 buildings down, there's a guy at the door, and he sees me pull, and he closes the door, and I have no probable cause. The officers on the bike said, well, let's take a look. And they come in on the walkway, which is right next to the apartment in question. And the man has drugs in his hand and gun paraphernalia, and there's other things going on at this apartment. And the police in the car never would have been able to get there because every time the car was spotted, the action was, the illegal actions were ceased.
So they do have an advantage in terms of not being as noisy, not being as visible in one way, because they're also visible when they're out in the community on a much more human level. Does patrolling on a bicycle have you looked at if there are more significant risks for police officers patrolling on a bike than in a car? Is that a marked difference or a deterrent to being on bikes?
Well, I think that one of the issues that's kind of a misconception about policing is that they're out there crime fighting every minute of the day on their shift, where there's a multitude of other things: traffic control, crowd control, imposing order, dealing with car accidents. There's a number of other things that police officers do that are not apprehending bad guys with the dramatic music in the background. And so when you take that look, you can kind of think that the police officer, certainly they need protection, but they all get out of the car if there are issues that have to be dealt with, and certainly the image of the car being used for cover is a clear one that's reinforced by police dramas. But I think that certainly that's an issue. Police officers on bicycles, all of them that I saw, were wearing bulletproof vests, which is the same thing that police officers in the cars wear. And that in some ways that because they're riding the bicycle, they've brought their metabolism up to a higher level of alertness, and there's some evidence that this is what happens. And so they're more ready to deal with situations when they get to them than the police officer in the car.
And also, dealing with situations and everything has. What is the opinion from police officers who you rode with and you were part of this study? What was their overall impression? Is cycling something they thought every police department should do, or something that they would want to do again? Not necessarily for the term of their service, but what was the feeling within the law enforcement community?
The vast majority of police officers, overwhelmingly, the police officers who were riding bikes liked the fact that they were riding bikes. I would have to say I think that police officers on a bike are happier. I was mentioning that to somebody who was a big bike advocate, and he said, well, everybody on a bike, you're happier when you're on a bike. And so certainly but as far as, it's tactical advantages, and oftentimes the foot patrol is a big issue in policing. A lot of communities insist upon this. They believe that it gets the police out there. Well, many of the police say all foot patrols should be replaced by bicycle patrols because you've just increased the coverage area that the foot patrol can do. And so there are some on the police department that certainly would say, oh, bikes are bad, and I've run into them certainly. But I think that on many levels it's a very positive thing for health, for mental health, for you can demonstrate a reduction in greenhouse gases when you use bicycles instead of cars. Fuel costs, it's more economical. But I think that one of the things is that the police executives, as well as the public in general, view bicycles as toys, not tools. And I think that's something that we have to kind of try to get over if we are looking at how we conceive what a bicycle is. Because the role of the police is as serious as a heart attack, imposing social control, maintaining order, the drama of the thin blue line. But that is an issue. And so if administrators, I think, sometimes conceive bicycles as not being as serious as police work really is. I see that as an obstacle.
So, do all major urban areas, thinking about the seriousness and how people view bike patrols, what would you say? Have you looked into the prevalence over different cities and different
Yeah.
police departments on how many are using bike patrols and to what extent, and where's the future of bike patrolling going?
I think the first part of your question is yes, that all major cities use bicycle patrols, use bicycles, and that's from the federal surveys, from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. But I guess after that, so you have a bicycle. Is it in the basement getting dust like many Americans' bicycles are? And so that's what I set out to know, and I'm still kind of confounded on how I can find out, city usage. So I sent out a request to police chiefs in this area, the New England area, and about 100 of them answered this one question: are you anticipating using more bicycles because of fuel costs? And a number of them said yes, they would be using bicycles at a higher level than they had previously used. And but again, it's the inertia, the mental inertia of doing this paradigm shift that a bicycle's a viable means of transportation. I just came back from a vacation in Holland, where my wife and I biked around, and granted, there's a lot of differences between the two countries, but it's a substantial portion of the transportation there is done by bicycle.
And how about the police work in Holland? Did you see any presence of bicycle police officers?
Absolutely, there were bicycle police officers. Well, I saw the bicycle police officers I saw were in Amsterdam. We were on the countryside for most of the trip.
It'd be too long of a ride. Well, we've come up at the end of our interview, and this is what came to our producer's attention was the article "Bicycle Patrol versus Car Patrols," which was published in the April 2007 issue of Law and Order magazine. If people want to take a look at that, they can go to www.lawandordermag.com. And we've been speaking with Chris Menton, Doctorate of Education, Associate Professor at Roger Williams University, and bike patrols being more effective than car patrols. And I guess what's the verdict on that?
Well, I'm saying let's blend them and use them both.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Menton, and we'll be on with the rest of the show.
Martin, thank you.